Good morning, everyone. Once again, Rector Arundel here with Able Spirit to Me, and I am Able. Welcome back to the video series of the book Sealed with Seven Seals. Very happy to have Jason once again with me this morning, and we are going to continue on the 7 days of creation, which you know by now have a lot more meaning to them in depth than you may have otherwise believed. So, Jason's going to continue filling it out for us, and I'm going to let him take the floor. Jason, thank you for being with us, and looking forward to hearing what you got to say today.
Okay, thank you, Rector. All right, so in our previous segments, we talked about the 2 of the 7 days, and we mentioned day 1 a little bit too. And I thought today would be good to kind of go back a little bit and fill in a couple pieces. And so I thought we'd cover day 2 and 3 in this segment. And then there's a few concepts that I want to introduce that will help in dealing with day 6 and 7.
Okay.
We'll cover those in the segment. And the concept that I want to introduce, it'll actually be helpful even for day 2 and 3, because as I explained earlier, each of these 7 days of creation is a millennium.
Right.
And that gives a block of 7,000 years, which that 7,000 years is the duration of an eternity, or it's an instance of a heavens and an earth. You know, in the book of Revelation in chapter 21, it says, "And there shall be a new heavens and a new earth, and the old things pass away, and all things are made new."
Right.
And some people may think, oh my goodness, you know, if this applies to the physical cosmos, that's just going to be completely appending to all existence.
Right.
And therefore, as I introduced in the earlier segments, the biblical creation actually pertains directly to human civilization versus our physical cosmos. And so when it says there's a new heavens and a new earth, that's just basically means there's a new cycle of world civilization.
Okay.
And so when we're looking at these earlier days, you know, these are just the millennia preceding the time of Christ. And day 4 actually encompassed from about King David to Jesus Christ. And so day 3 prior to that, we're taking in Abraham and Moses. And then day 2 goes back another 1,000 years earlier, which puts us in the space of the flood, Noah.
Okay.
And so now a lot of people think that when the Bible talks about Adam and Eve and Abel and Cain and Seth and Enos and Lamech and Methuselah and, you know, all of these early patriarchs,
right.
You know, a lot of people in their minds, they think of these personages named in the Bible as if there's just these single human persons.
Right.
And people are like really puzzled, because before the flood, you know, we had these beings who are living, you know, upwards of almost 1,000 years.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, you know, this global submersion of our planet in a flood of water,
right,
altered the nature of life so drastically that, you know, they use that as the pivot point to rationalize why there's these lifespan discrepancies before and after the flood.
Right.
But when you take this new paradigm that comes out of the book Sealed with Seven Seals, an essential component to that is to recognize that, you know, even though it says day 5 is the fish, and the fowl.
Right.
You know, that's the multiplicity of all kinds of fishes and fowls. It's, you know, it's not like there's only one of the Christian denominations that counts as the fish. It's all denominations of Christianity
Right.
are different species and expressions, and you know, and they have their advantages and their disadvantages, but yet it's a valid spiritual life form. And so all of these things that we encounter in these 7 days of creation, that they're representative of a reality.
Right.
And some people think, oh, metaphor is just a metaphor, and it's not really teaching anything solid and concrete. It's just, you know, you glean a principle here and a principle there, and you know, but when I say that the days of creation are a metaphor, I'm not saying that they should be dismissed. This is a reality portrayed in a metaphorical way, but there's still that absolute reality behind it.
Right.
And so this 7 days paradigm, the 7 seals, it alters how you view what occurred in our ancient roots of Western civilization. And so, for example, if we look at day 2, it talks about Noah, and he had a wife, and he had his sons, and those sons had daughters. You know, those are the people that had their roles to play in providing the ark, and then they bring all these creatures onto this ark and preserve these creatures.
Right.
And the thing that the 7 seals at the very beginning of the Bible establishes, and then as soon as the 7 seals are touched on, it says these are the generations. It's like it's introducing this concept to your mind that the cosmos that the Bible is addressing is this spiritual cosmos.
Right.
First, our planetary, physical cosmos.
Right.
And to understand all of this and to parse it out to where you get from symbolic, mythical narrative to actual hard and fast reality you can put your fingers on, you actually have to cipher what you're reading in the Bible through this creation context.
Makes sense, yes.
So in other words,
I know you're.
Go ahead.
I know you're addressing a really important concept that we have to understand, but I had a quick question for you that might help some other viewers like me.
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
When it comes to the timeline, we understand the 7 days of creation. Each day is equal to a millennia. I mean, roughly 1,000 years. And you were talking about Jesus Christ making his appearance at the end of the 5th day. Is that correct, or at the beginning?
4th.
Okay, into the 4th day.
4th. Yeah.
So I think it might help others, including myself. I'm an analytical person, to know when you're talking about the 2nd day, we're talking about basically 3000 BC, if I do the math correctly in my head.
Yes.
Okay.
Day 2 would be approximately 3000 BC to about 2000 BC, and I believe the flood falls right in there closer to the end of that.
And that's why I really think it's helpful for us to put these timelines. So you're saying that according to the Bible, most likely the flood happened between 2000 and 3000 BC. And to me, that's helpful to put it in my brain, exactly timeline, because it's important information. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought a sharper clarity to that, because, you know, day 4 starting at about King David, his reign was around 1000 BC.
Gotcha.
And so day 3 would be from 1000 to 2000 BC, roughly.
Right.
And then day 2 is like you said.
3 to 4.
And so then day 1 is the very beginning, or millennia since, you know, the beginning. And it's going to be interesting as we get into that, but that'll have to be another segment.
Sure. So thank you for the update, and please, as continue.
Okay. So there's this context shift that is like a cipher. And we already talked about in day 5 the creatures in the waters, and that the waters represent something as well, because waters is an aspect of day 2 of the creation.
Right.
It says, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it divide the waters from the waters. So here's these waters and these firmaments, and then the firmament is called heaven. And within the heavens are these luminaries, these great lights that have rulership. And so that, and I already pointed out that rulership is indicative that this is about people, not planets, right?
Right.
And although, if you talk to an astrologer, they do ascribe a lot of governing powers to planets. So, they could possibly make that argument with me, and that's okay. But anyway, I believe are living entities of intelligence, and so they probably have their place in the grand scheme of things. But
in the humor of arguments, sorry, I hate to interrupt you, but just to interject, in the humor of argument, the Hindu, the Vedas, they describe that these planetary bodies are being ruled by direct I don't know what word to use, but rulers assigned by God for a certain role. There is a ruler of the sun, there's a ruler of the earth. So it goes along with what you're saying. They are entities that are controlling the rulers of these planetary bodies even. So astronomer might have their own spin on it, but it's all in the same realm of a cohesive, it makes sense, the matrix, yeah. So I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's fine. I like that. So anyway, so these waters and the firmaments and that he describes as heavens, and then later are the lights that he places in the firmament, and these are the ruling, governing. These are in the spiritual cosmos. This all pertains to people,
right?
And so when you talk about the flood that occurred in day 2, you pick up on the subtle aspects of the language, like it says that it drowned the breath of life from all living things, except for those that were sequestered and protected in the ark.
Right.
And so when you understand the cyclical nature of creation from cycle to cycle, and that it all pertains to people, when Noah's ushering all these creatures into the ark, that needs to be ciphered according to the 7 seals.
Okay. Because
the 7 seals are the encryption, if you want to call it.
Yeah, very much so.
So what the concept that I want to introduce is that all the way up through to the flood, and even extending after the flood to some extent, these beings are not human individuals. Noah was not a single human person like you and me. And all of his predecessors, all the way clear up to Adam, these were not human personages, individuals.
Okay.
And so this gets into the concept of beings of a different nature. And understanding these beings is crucial, because you can't really fully apply the sealed portion narrative without understanding this distinction. And I use the terms in the Bible that are the closest to describing this is a being of flesh and bone.
Okay.
And being of flesh and bone is when you have a covenant and there's parties to the covenant, this covenant bonds those individuals together as a body. And, throughout the New Testament, the Apostle Paul was very descriptive in how he would personify the collective of the church as a body,
Right.
and that's parts, and certain parts of the body shouldn't boast itself against other parts of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And he even came right out and told the brethren of the priesthood, this is in Ephesians chapter 5, he says, you are members of the body of Christ, of his flesh and of his bone. And there's other places in the scripture where this concept of flesh and bone beings is addressed. Laban referred to Jacob, you're now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. You're family, you're part of my patriarch. And a patriarch, like when a husband and a wife come together in sacred union, they form a new being that's the union of these individuals. And so a patriarch is an example of a body of flesh and bone.
Okay.
When people enter the church and take on those covenants, they're a body of flesh and bone, as brothers and sisters in the faith.
Right.
And so Noah was one of these beings, and in the masculine it's a priesthood or governing body. In the feminine it's the nurturing spiritual mother church body. And so days 2 and 3 bring us to the point where we transition out of these flesh and bone beings into where we start with Abraham, which Abraham, to me, as best I can tell, that's when you're now dealing with human individuals.
Interesting spin. Okay. So,
yeah. So
you're saying that Noah, the name Noah is referring to a group of individuals who are tied together, maybe family, maybe beliefs, but they are not.
They're a spiritual group, and it becomes a spiritual patriarch.
Interesting. So that would go along with all the other descendants as well. Or actually, I'm sorry, predecessors before Noah, like Adam, Eve, and.
In other words, let's go back to day 1 where we're dealing with Adam and Eve, right? So
Okay.
What I'm saying implies Adam is a governing priesthood body, a dynasty. And it's not unheard of that a dynasty would extend for a period of 1,000 years.
Right. Yeah.
A church would have its cohesive longevity upwards of 1,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at Adam and Eve as beings of flesh and bone, as described in biblical texts, and I would be amazed if there wasn't something of that sort in the Vedic texts. I've sensed those, but I'm not a scholar of those documents. But that's an important, crucial thing to know where that pivot point is in day 2 and 3. And then there's other things too that I wanted to mention quickly. Day 3, talking about Abraham. Day 3 is when the dry land seas are parted and separated.
Right.
And so now we have shoreline in our creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what did God promise Abraham about his seed? He said that Abraham's seed would be as the sands of the seashore.
Right. He did. Yeah.
Each one of these days of creation, you find these hints and these clues, these little connecting points, like Jesus telling the disciples to be fishers of men.
Mm-hmm.
You see these things. And obviously, Noah's time, the flood and the waters, day 2 talking about all the waters, certainly that's indicative of that millennial period.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so hopefully that gives a pretty good introduction to those millennia and the important distinction that.
Well, it's a huge concept, and I think everyone needs to digest for a while. So I think we should stop there. And that's, like I said, that's a big one. I'll probably be watching this more than once to make sure that I digest it.
It's fine. There is one more point I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
And so if you're looking for the flood of Noah as deciphered by the 7 seals, what you should look for is the rising up of a very intensely powerful leftist, like tyrannical, big government type of expansion, some type of empire that ultimately quashed the individual liberty of people living in the region of Mesopotamia.
And you would know better
That's
than I
what, yeah.
who,
So,
who that
so
was.
if you're looking at Adam and an Eve and a Noah and all of these, you got to look for these dynasties. You got to look at, it's like Nimrod is Babylon. That's a fairly obvious one that people seem to talk about. It's like Nimrod wasn't a person. Nimrod was a political collective that was a force to reckon with, that was, involved in all that warfare going on in the days of Abraham. Things are very political.
Yeah, okay.
And so this flood of Noah was a flood of tyranny.
Gotcha.
That attempt to just reset the whole religious system and just wash it clean, because religion tends to get corrupted and needs a reboot. And that's kind of more what you would see if you're looking for the actual deciphered manifestation.
That concept right there does resonate. I think we have to stop this video, but in the Vedas, they talk about needing a reset at a specific time period. That's a consistent concept, so that's very curious. Let's stop this now, and we'll start again, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you.